From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Here's what's ahead. K-State's Gregg Ibendahl is standing by to share his just-released estimate on Kansas net farm income for 2021, as well as his income projection for 2022, using Kansas Farm Management Association grain farm data as the basis for his calculations. Also in today, K-State's Robin Reid, reporting on her updated analysis of the returns to participating in either of the USDA's agricultural risk coverage or price loss coverage programs on grain production here in 22. And on this week's horticulture segment, K-State's Rebecca McMahon will offer several things to think about when shopping for vegetable garden seed here this winter. All that's coming up on this Agriculture Today. You are tuned in to the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. Fresh information is just out from the Department of Agricultural Economics here at K-State, and it would be of broad interest to agricultural producers throughout the state of Kansas. Our guest and his associates have come up with a preliminary estimate of 2021 Kansas net farm income, as well as a projection on net farm income in the state for 2022. Research and Extension Farm Management Economist Gregg Ibendahl of K-State is with us once again. Gregg, what you do here is use Kansas Farm Management Association data and work through the numbers to get a feel of what's happening and what may happen income-wise.
Yeah, it's always a big question for farmers and lenders and everybody who works with farmers about trying to make an estimation of what net farm income can be, because that has a lot of influence over what your decisions may be for the coming year about getting bank loans and, what kind of credit you can get and, if you should go out and buy new machinery and that kind of thing. So actually making projections for net farm income, I think, is a pretty important thing. And, I use KFMA data in my analysis, but we don't actually publish the official results probably until about May when all that is kind of published. So I'm kind of making a preliminary estimate of 2021, and then I'm really sticking my neck out and making a forecast for 2022, which is really risky with, we haven't even got anything on the ground yet. So, making a lot of assumptions there. But it does, give us some idea about maybe making some planning ideas and at least a rough idea of what net farm income might be in this coming year.
And just to specify here, you're concentrating on grain farms primarily.
Yes, just to not have to worry about the whole livestock sector and such. And, grain is probably our biggest sector in the state. So looking at that as an idea, it makes my analysis just a little bit simpler, focusing on that set of farms.
As you go about this, for there might be multiple ways of doing so, what are the components that you concentrate on and plug numbers into, so to speak, in your model?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things you got to look at. So obviously on the income side, you have to look at what the yields might be and what prices might be. And again, for 2021, we already know the state price, so that's not that big, I guess, as long as the actual yields. And then we also, on the income side, we would also have some estimation of government payments. And again, for 2021, that's already been set in stone, so I actually have the state number for that. So that number should actually be pretty close to my estimate. And then we move to the expense side, and we look at things like what are we looking for input prices that they're going to be paying? Fertilizer especially has been a tough one because it has increased so much this year. So I have to make some decisions about, how much to allocate for this year versus next year. And with the whole idea then with farmers doing cash accounting, we look at the idea that, farmers may have bought a lot of their fertilizer already for 2022, even though it was very high price this fall, which would actually tend to lower net farm income in the current year. So all those things have to come into play in our analysis.
But you allude to those crop input costs. Those are the real uncertain element in all of this right now.
Yeah, so, I can obviously look at what the current price is for fertilizer and such, and as anybody has been paying attention with last year, especially this fall, has really increased dramatically. But again, farmers for 2021 probably bought a lot of their fertilizer for the 2021 crop before they saw a lot of those big increases come into play. So even though we did see some big increases during the year, I think farmers probably had a good chunk of their fertilizer fertilizer for this last year already purchased. So a lot of the higher fertilizer prices I don't think will show up in the 2021 income statement. It's going to be 2022 where I think farmers are really going to see a big hit to the net farm income from those big increases we've been seeing.
And we will in a moment talk about specifics as far as that projection goes. But you did note as well government farm payments, and we have the traditional standard year-to-year payment structure, but there in the last year or two have been additional contributions in that area.
Yeah, so we have the regular government payments, which are fairly easy to calculate once we know what the numbers are going to be, which Robin Reid and our ag manager usually publishes those. So I have a pretty good idea for those. But those ad hoc ones are kind of the hard thing to figure out. So the last couple of years, there has been a pretty good amount of ad hoc government payments. 2021 actually had ad hoc government payments, although farmers may have a hard time remembering those because they came out very early in the year. I think there was like a $20 payment per acre to crop producers for that. So that was supposedly going to be the last one, but since they're ad hoc, who knows if any more of those may show up. So for 2022, we're not really projecting too much in the way of ad hoc payments at this point in time. And even the regular government payments with the way crop prices are and such, we're probably not projecting really a whole lot in that side either. So that alone is going to account for the big drop we're seeing in 2022 for net farm income. When you take out those ad hoc government payments, you take out the regular ones, that's a pretty good chunk of our net farm income right there.
I want to come back briefly here to crop inputs. Fertilizer gets all the attention, and justifiably so, but we're seeing hikes in fuel prices as well, and you are figuring those in.
Yeah, I think really about everything you look at is going to be, I'd say, at least 5 to 10% higher for input costs for farmers, and a lot of that just has to do, we're in an era right now of higher inflation than we've seen for a long time. So I think if you pencil in at least 5 to 10% increase in most inputs, I don't think you'd be too far off. And, some things like fertilizer and those things related to fuel are probably going to see even higher increases than that. So diesel fuels that, most farmers use a lot of that. You can certainly make an argument that fuel and oil prices are tied to fertilizer prices to some degree. So all those things, we've seen pretty good run-ups in price over the last year or two, what they have been, and I don't really see those necessarily going down over the coming years. So anything that takes fuel or fertilizer especially is going to be a big increase for farmers for their input costs.
So you throw a whole lot of numbers into this pot by way of the model that you've put together. You've looked at Farm Management Association, grain farm revenues and expenses for, 2019, 2020, over 500 farms, and you've come up with an estimate of 2021 net farm income. What does that number actually say?
Well, just looking at that, so we've had pretty good grain prices this last year. I know what the state grain price has been across the state for each month here, so assuming farmers kind of follow their typical marketing percentages amount for this last year, we're looking at pretty good, a really good set of net farm income for farmers. So like in 2020, which is the firm number we do have, we were at $187 for grain farms, $187,000 for grain farms in 2020, which was probably close to a record. Mm-hmm. We're looking at a bigger increase for 2021, going from 187 up to about 261, which would be about a 40% increase. And again, there's a lot of assumptions in that, and probably the biggest assumption that might actually pull that number back down a little bit is when farmers actually pulled the trigger for buying fertilizer for the 2022 crop. So, even though it was really high for this fall, I think probably a lot of farmers probably did see that they were going to have really good net farm income. So a lot of farmers may have went ahead and pulled the trigger, which actually may pull that back down. But depending on when they buy it, that would put 2021 at 261. But then we're going to see probably a really big drop off in 2022, probably down to about $90,000, which is about a 60 or some % decrease. Now that seems like a lot, but it really would be in line what we had probably for net farm income probably for about 5 or 6 years ago. We're in the stage right now where we're probably about 7 years in running where we've seen higher increases in net farm income. I think 2022 will definitely be the first year where that drops back down quite a bit.
But that might, as you point out in the write-up on all of this, be tempered some if producers, as you've referred to, did pay for fertilizer in advance for 2022 in the 2021 calendar year, and that could help 2022's end number.
Yeah, I think if you look at my 2-year numbers, I feel fairly confident in that, again, assuming we have normal yields and prices like I'm looking at. So, yeah, it's very possible they bought more fertilizer than what I had anticipated than they have in the past, and we could see probably a lower 2021 than I'm forecasting. But if they did do that, then 2022 would be higher here. So it just really depends on the allocation of that fertilizer expense.
One of the things, though, that you do stress as you pull your conclusions together here, that we may see a substantial percentage of Kansas grain farms with a negative net farm income in 2022, given all this.
Yeah, so even though we have probably projecting record net farm income for 2021, that's taken care of in my write-up here as well, but one of the graphs shows what the distribution of that income would typically tend to be. So based on what I'm projecting, even though we're looking at record net farm income, we probably are having probably about 10% of our farms, even in this potentially record net farm income year, that are probably going to have negative net farm income. So they're not making any money at all here. So the Tailsville are the ones we really need to worry about. There's always probably going to be a few farmers that are going to be struggling even in the really good years. And I think that's going to be a bigger issue going into 2022, where at that point I'm projecting about 30% of our farms are going to have negative net farm income. So, even though, think net farm income's looking pretty good, there's still some of those farmers out there that are struggling that we need to watch out for.
So here we are in 2022. It sounds as if the message here to producers is, with lucrative years in recent past, they need to proceed with extra caution here in this new year in their grain production management specifically.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts going on right now that have me kind of concerned here. So not only are we looking at a year with a big drop in net farm income that producers kind of need to plan for, but we also have a situation with higher inflation going on right now and a lot of uncertainty about prices and such. So farmers are going to have a drop in net farm income, and maybe some farms are going to have negative net farm income. Those are good opportunities for farmers really to take on more debt, which is really going to be a bad thing if we're looking at years where inflation is high and interest rates are high. Adding debt may not be the thing to do because you're going to have a lot higher interest expense than you may have had in the past.
You have a paper on all of this, summarizing it nicely. Producers can have a look at that directly, Greg.
Yeah, that's our NAG manager, so I'd encourage you to look at it. Certainly think ahead for the next couple of years what you think would happen with input prices and maybe kind of adjust your family living and spending to account for the fact that we may be looking at a couple of years here where net farm income probably is going to be a lot lower than it has been for the past 5 years or so.
Very well. Good work on all this as usual, and we'll be talking again quite soon. Thanks, Greg.
All right, thanks.
He is a farm management economist, K-State Research and Extension. Gregg Ibendahl there. Agriculture Today returns in a moment on the K-State Radio Network. Agriculture Today continues now. Our next guest has just put together more information for you crop producers as you think about your USDA program participation regarding ARC and PLC as your program options. Robin Reid is with us once more, agricultural economist with K-State Research and Extension. She has just put new numbers on the agmanager.info website toward this end, and we'll be getting into that today. But there's a reason that you and colleagues, Robin, continually crunch numbers and share them on ARC and PLC. They're the staples of the support program.
Right. So we're still operating under the 2018 Farm Bill. And if you remember when we had our first decision point, we had to sign up for 2 years of program decisions, and now we're on that annual basis. So we'll be signing up by March 15th of this year, and that'll be for the 2022 harvested crop.
Just as backdrop here, the most recent year's decisions on ARC and PLC and how they shook out in Kansas situation anyway.
Well, so what we do every month is we're tracking the prices in that marketing year average. So last year, 2021 harvested crop, that's when we started the marketing year for 2021, 2022. So our fall crops, that started September 1st. And each month, the USDA puts out a price for what corn or soybeans or wheat sold for across the country in that month over all the different sales. And then we project the months that are coming forward, and each month is weighted by the amount of grain sold. And at the end of the year, that's what becomes the marketing year average. So each month we put out estimates for this. The wheat has been going a little while since that is started in June for the marketing year. We're projecting right now a $7.47 wheat marketing year price, so obviously very high compared to what we've seen in the past. Comparing that with a PLC value of $5.50, we don't anticipate any PLC payments this year. Our corn price right now estimated at $5.36. Our grain sorghum estimate coming in at $5.70, and our soybean estimate at $12.40. So obviously these are all quite high, but know those fall crops, there's only 3 months that are locked in that are published by USDA, and the rest are estimates. So we have a while to go till we get to the end of this marketing year, but prices are looking quite high, as most producers would anticipate.
So the odds are reasonably strong that no PLC payments will be forthcoming across the board, it sounds.
Exactly. So we may see some Ark County payments in some of our counties that had some drought issues or some production issues at the county level, but likely I would say don't be putting any program payments on your cash flow for 2022. But as we want to talk about today, the decision we're making now is for the crop, again, harvested this year, but we determine that marketing year price, and then those payments aren't made until October of 2023.
And that's where that March the 15th date comes in for making your selection here.
Exactly. So you're making a selection on a crop that is in the ground now in case of wheat, or you haven't even planted yet in case of corn or soybeans. The marketing year starts this fall, so it's really a year and a half out until we actually get this payment that we're making the decision on now.
But you're trying to be, along with your associates, proactive in providing a semblance of an idea of what those payments might be for this next crop to be harvested here in 2022. You do have some numbers out there now, you say, Robin?
Yeah, so the data was released setting the benchmarks for the Ark County program. And, what I was waiting on there is what are the county yields that are setting the guarantee for 2022? Because if you remember, that program takes a 5-year Olympic average yield of the county yields and then determines that benchmark. So when those are released by USDA, then we can put out what I call the trade-off is what program would be better, Ark County or PLC. And that is available now on our website at agmanager.info. There's a little instructional video if you've never used it before. It's great just to kind of understand the table. I've been putting this out for years, so a lot of producers are probably familiar with it. But basically what it tells you is at the different marketing year prices that could occur for 2022, 2023 marketing year, what would the PLC payments look like? In the case of corn, obviously PLC has to get below $3.70 before it starts making a payment. In the case of Ark County, we're looking at what's the county yield going to come out at for 2022, and then what's the marketing year average price, comparing that revenue to the revenue guarantee, and then what's the difference, will there be a payment? And that's where I say, looking at corn, we got to get below $3.70 to get a PLC payment. Will that happen? Not likely, as we see the commodity prices we have now. But that Ark County program is fairly sensitive to the county yield. So if we do have some drought issues this year, we have a lower county yield, those Ark County payments could kick in even in the $5 corn range.
As you look at the other commodities, any chance of potential payment for this year's crop production?
Well, kind of the same story as corn and a lot of these other commodities. So soybeans, $8.40 is where price loss coverage PLC payments start kicking in. Our guarantee on the Ark County side is a little higher for soybeans this year. It's $9.12. Again, that's an Olympic average of 5 years of national marketing year prices. So I do see soybeans definitely leaning towards Ark County. They've never had a PLC payment, so I anticipate that to continue. When we look at wheat, comparing our prices to the reference price is $5.50 on wheat, so we have to get below that to get a PLC payment. The Ark County side, our guarantee there price-wise is $5.50 as well. And then grain sorghum, this has been another one that's favored PLC in the past. It takes a $3.95 price. Anything below that gets a PLC payment. But, it's a different environment now. When we looked at last year, what programs were chosen for these commodities, a lot of our wheat, 77% in Kansas, a lot of our grain sorghum, 71%, were still in the PLC program because there were very good payments in the past. I do anticipate a lot more of that switching to Ark County just because there's not a big chance of getting those PLC payments. But if there's a yield loss, there is a chance of Ark County payments. Corn historically last year, about half our producers chose Ark County, half chose PLC. So I do anticipate maybe more of those acres switching to Ark County this year. But, in a nutshell, what we're looking at is basically if producers are worried about catastrophic price loss, getting back to those PLC reference prices, then, stay with the PLC program. Kind of like soybeans have been in the past, if you don't think there's a chance that we'll ever get to those low prices again, Ark County is probably the way to go just because of that chance of a payment if we have a catastrophically low county yield.
Now, of course, we're speaking broadly here and in somewhat of a generality. You want producers still to run the numbers for their own purposes and use the tools that you have on agmanager.info.
Yes, that's exactly right. Giving general information here, but what this tool is really for is to look at the economics of your own operation. And, the reason it's operation specific is PLC pays based on your established program yield of the farm times that loss in price if there's something below the reference price. So you really, in the spreadsheet, put in your own established farm yield with the Farm Service Agency, and then you can see exactly what the trade-off would be. When are Ark County payments going to kick in, and what are the PLC payments at that level? And that's really the value of the tool. Some of our operations that have a low established yield with Farm Service Agency, that makes Ark County more inviting just because those PLC payments won't be as high as some other farms that have a higher program yield. So again, that's the value of looking at the tool, is just evaluating where the guarantees are at, what the payments might be specific to that farming operation.
It's easy to operate, as you've told us in the past, and how they access this. Go to Ag Manager, and there's a link to it directly there?
Yes, in Ag Manager, go under the Ag Policy section in the 2018 Farm Bill, and it'll be the top thing on the list, the trade-off between the 2022-2023 Ark PLC decision. And I know there's other decision tools out there. University of Illinois and Texas have been the ones that are consistently been promoted, and I don't disagree that those are tools to look at too, but really the one that I've developed I think is the easiest to understand, straightforward in making this decision.
And you don't want producers to procrastinate. They have some time yet before March the 15th, but start looking at this relatively soon.
Yeah, and I should emphasize, if you want to stay with your current program decisions, you really don't have to go into FSA and make this decision every year if you want to stay with the ones that you currently have. March 15th seems like a long ways off, but I would go ahead and contact them to make sure you can get in time and make those changes if you wish to do so.
Very well. Will crop producers be contemplating your decision on Ark or PLC for the crops you'll be harvesting this year for payment next year? March the 15th is that deadline for the decision. And do take full advantage of what Robin and company have put together in the way of supportive tools for coming to a conclusion on that selection at agmanager.info. Always a pleasure. Robin, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Eric.
Agricultural economist with K-State Research and Extension, Robin Reid, with us on this part of Agriculture Today. We'll have more for you shortly here on the K-State Radio Network. We're back now on Agriculture Today, and coming your way this week's horticulture segment. And we should note here that starting yesterday, the series of K-State Garden Hour webinars was rekindled, and those will continue every first Wednesday of the month throughout the remainder of 2022. That first session focused on something that a number of you vegetable gardeners are after right now, making decisions on variety selections for your next gardening go-round here starting this spring. Rebecca McMahon is with us, Sedgwick County Extension horticulture agent, and she spoke on selecting vegetable varieties in that webinar yesterday. What principles are you offering to gardeners as far as making strategic selections about vegetables that will work in their garden?
Well, Eric, I always counsel folks to first start with, what did not work last year? What did you want more of? What did you want less of? and why are you growing a particular vegetable? What do you plan to do with it? And then we have to start making some critical decisions about what varieties are going to be a good fit for those particular needs.
And when you say a good fit, a great amount of that has to do with the adaptability of those varieties to our growing conditions here, right?
Exactly. Anymore, there are hundreds and hundreds of vegetable varieties out there, ranging from hybrids to heirlooms and everything in between, as far as age of varieties. There's plain old red tomatoes and green beans, and then there's purple beans and striped tomatoes and, all kinds of craziness going on with our varieties. So there's so many choices that it can feel really overwhelming. And so it's one part knowing what your personal preferences are, and one part understanding the specific climate needs for us in Kansas and maybe even your specific part of Kansas, or even more specifically, your actual garden and the soil conditions and your maintenance practices, and then mixing all of those things together to come up with the varieties that are the best choice for you. And
as far as pinning down varieties, climate adaptability traits, that information is readily available in the catalog literature?
Sometimes when you're looking through catalogs, they have really good marketing staff, that write their descriptions. And so you sometimes have to decode things a little bit and read between the lines. Many of these varieties are developed in the Pacific Northwest or climates that are more mild than Kansas. And so when they say that something is heat tolerant in the Pacific Northwest is very different from heat tolerant in Kansas. Right. and so even though we are looking for those code words, we're looking for heat tolerance, drought tolerance, cold tolerance, all of these things, they don't always mean tolerance to our specific conditions. That makes it even a little more challenging.
Do as much research as one can with multiple sources of information.
Absolutely. With all of the options out there, you have to take all of the pieces of information that you can find, and then you try things and see, did it perform the way I expected it to perform? Did I like it? Or did it not do well? Was it something I did? Was it Kansas weather? Is it worth trying again? There's a lot of, kind of citizen science and, just home observation of varieties to really find what's going to work in your specific location.
Well, learn more about making prudent variety selections to put into your vegetable garden this coming spring. Take a look at that webinar video. You can find it by simply searching for K-State Garden Hour, and that website will tell you how to access that from there. It's a great topic for this time of the year while we're still hunkered down with the winter weather. Appreciate the input, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Featured on this week's horticulture segment, Extension Horticulture Agent in Sedgwick County, Rebecca McMahon. And with that, our time's away once more. Thanks for tuning in. Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.